Hi, Dr. B. Welcome to our presentation on sensory effects on childhood memories.
By Lindsay,
Riley,
Katie,
Morgan,
and Mara.
Think of your earliest memory. How old were you? Do you remember very much about it? Earliest childhood memories typically range from as early as 2.5 to 4 years old. These memories can be hard to pinpoint as they decay over time and can be influenced by other information given to them that may influence the memory at hand. Sensory information can bring feelings of familiarity or bring about vivid recollection. Memories associated with emotion can show more sensory, perceptual, and semantic elements, and positive memories have also been known to show even greater context and metacognition. In this video, we will explore the olfactory, auditory, and visual senses and their relationship to enhancing memory retrieval after significant time has passed.
Odor cube memories have been shown to conjure older memories. In a study by Willander and Larson in 2006, they conducted a study where they had someone smell a scent. So we'll have this person smell some flowers and conjure a memory for us. As you can see, it's from the first decade of life. So they conjured a memory that was older than another memory, whereas if I ask Riley to tell me about a time that reminds her of flowers.
I remember a time when I wore flowers to prom in high school.
So in this sense, the decade is later on, from about 11 to 20, when being asked to conjure a memory, giving a verbal cue compared to giving a scent.
Based on previous research, significant connections have been found between olfactory senses and memory recall. In relation to childhood memories, smells of perfume were linked to positive memories compared to the no odor control group when participants were asked to remember a childhood memory. Therefore, if participants have a positive memory, smell will likely have a greater effect in remembering the childhood event. Not only does odor affect positive memories, but using the same odor can also trigger memory recall. Aggleton and Waskett also conducted a study in 1999 where participants toured a Viking museum, and years later they were given a questionnaire about it. While taking the questionnaire, participants were split up into 3 groups. The 3 groups contained no odor, a control odor unrelated to the museum, or an odor that was present in the museum at the time of the visit. After delay, they tested the group with the same questionnaire. This time, participants were moved to different odor-based groups. The only group that did better was the group who moved from the control scent to the museum scent. This suggests that having the same scent at the time of the original event and then the later testing scenario may lead to greater memory of the events.
Another study on auditory effects on memory looked at nostalgia that was evoked by music. Researchers had participants listen to 30 different song excerpts, and after that they answered questions about the excerpts. Some of the questions that were asked were how nostalgic the song made them feel, how familiar they were with the song, and how autobiographically salient the song was. Researchers found that the strength of the nostalgia felt was connected to the familiarity of the song, and researchers also found that the autobiographical salience of the song was the greatest predictor of whether the song gave the participant nostalgia or not.
In a research study about auditory memory, 7 to 11-year-old participants were exposed to the sound of a person brushing their teeth, and they were also exposed to the sound of a car crash.
Weeks later.
Two weeks later, participants were asked to come back and say what they recalled and recognized most.
I remember the car crash.
Lastly, in a research study comparing olfactory, visual, and auditory stimuli, researchers presented participants with a series of pure tones and asked participants to verbally indicate what number a certain tone was in the sequence of tones they previously heard. The stimuli were presented at 1,000 milliseconds in duration, played through headphones. Although visual stimuli was shown to have the most significant results, there was a significant recency effect found with auditory stimuli.
Vision has been shown to have a strong effect on memory. Specifically, researchers examined how imagining smell, taste, and appearance of French fries would affect the memory and detail of the object. Participants who had been randomly assigned to 3 groups, smell, taste, and appearance, rated their ability to recall the memory based on the sense used. They were then asked to record as much detail as possible. Visual memories were most easily accessible for the participants and had the most amount of information recorded.
A series of 6 unfamiliar faces were shown to a participant for 1 second at a time. They were then asked to what place in the sequence an unfamiliar face appeared.
Morgan, when did you see this face in the sequence?
The second photo.
Correct. Participants were best at recalling the location with visual stimuli, and they were worst with olfactory stimuli.
In addition to pictures of faces, researchers explored physical objects shown in person as well. Specifically, Alzheimer's patients and healthy older participants were put into separate groups to study this effect. The researchers wanted to discover whether concrete objects, such as a jump rope, would evoke more memories than verbal cues, such as the verbal explanation of a jump rope. After being exposed to both conditions, participants had to recall all of the memories that were evoked. It was found that significantly more memories were recalled when they were object cued rather than word cued, but the difference was larger for the patients with Alzheimer's. Although research on olfactory, auditory, and visual effects on memory offers insight, there were discrepancies found among the studies. There are varying results on the studies that stated which was the most prominent effect on memory. So in a study by Johnson and Miles, they either smelled, saw, or heard a different stimuli before being shown a duplicate and had to recall where these stimuli were presented in the study. And participants were best at recalling visual stimuli in the study. However, there was also a recency effect for auditory cues, but they struggled the most with olfactory stimuli. On the contrary, Goddard, Pring, and Felmingham found that odor cues over visual cues had an older and more vivid memory in comparison. And de Bourgogne and Bender found that olfactory cues resulted in much richer memories compared to visual ones. So not only is there a contradictory evidence to which sense is the best for recalling memories, there's also an issue that these are all done short term. So which sense is the best at recalling memories may also be affected by the length of time that passes between the memory creation and its recall, and these were only done short term, so we really cannot generalize that these would also be relevant long term. So we are interested in comparing olfactory, auditory, and visual senses in relation to memory in a longitudinal study for this reason. This will be explored through an experiment we created which expands on previous research by testing the effect of olfactory, auditory, and visual senses on childhood memory recall after a long period of time.
Our study will include 400 participants, 200 male and 200 female, broken up equally into 4 groups. Those groups include no stimuli, visual stimuli, auditory stimuli, and olfactory stimuli. Each group will consist of 100 participants, and additionally, the participants will be an even mixture of race and class. The materials we'll need are informed consents. We'll need 400 of those, an indoor playground, a neutral room for interviewing, a neutral car for transport, a neutral interviewer, a photo of the playground's logo, the playground scent, a CD player, and a track of the auditory stimuli music. This experiment will take place over 20 years, beginning when each participant is 3 years old. Every 4 weeks for 1 year, the child will be brought by the experimenter to an indoor playground where they'll be exposed to one of the 4 controls. This will add up to 12 monthly visits in a span of 1 year, making the child 4 years old when the visit ends. 20 years later, the 24-year-old adult will be brought into a room which lacks any stimuli other than the one that they were exposed to on the playground 20 years earlier. And the ones exposed to the visual stimuli will be interviewed in a room that has a logo on the wall that matches the one that they saw, or exposed to auditory stimuli. They'll be interviewed in a room with similar music playing lightly in the background. Those exposed to the olfactory stimuli will be interviewed in a room with the smell of the indoor playground's rubber scent. And all of these stimuli will remain unmentioned to the participant. The memories of the participant will be judged based on how negative or positive they are, and this will be tested with the linguistic and inquiry word count program. and that will explore the emotional content of the childhood memories. Our hypothesis suggests that participants will be more likely to recall the memory of the playground if they have positive emotions linked to it. This is according to past research, which says that olfactory stimuli are more likely to conjure positive emotions and memory recall. We also hypothesize that the least likely stimulus to benefit playground memory recall will be auditory. This is because, according to research, olfactory cues most often conjured memories from earlier in life, and visual cues were more likely to come in second. Based on our research, we predicted that participants would be more likely to recall the memory of the playground if they had a positive emotion linked to it. We also expected the auditory group to be least likely to recall the playground memories. If our previous hypotheses were to be correct, we could conclude that olfactory cues have a stronger effect than auditory, and visual cues on recall of memories made early in life. We could also conclude that memories with positive emotions tied to them are more likely to be recalled. But if our hypotheses are rejected, we could conclude that either the stimuli has no effect on childhood memory recall, or auditory and visual cues have a stronger effect than olfactory cues. We could also infer that either emotions do not play a role in childhood memory recall, or memories with negative emotions tied to them are more likely to be recalled.
If conducted, this research would help to gain understanding of how sensory information relates to childhood memory recall. Learning more about this kind of memory recall can help us to understand how these memories may remain more intact as a result of sensory information, and also how they decay over time. Next step to expanding this research would be a similar study continued over a larger period of time to see how the olfactory, auditory, and visual aspects have affected the memory's decay over time. Limitations for this study would include the need for new informed consent forms after the participants are past the age of 18 and parental consent is no longer valid. The new informed consent would have an influence on the recall of the participant, and participants could drop out due to lack of interest or time in conflicts during a busy time period in early adulthood. Other factors could include developmental differences, behavioral challenges, trauma, and mental health.
Since children will be playing on a playground and playing as a child is likely a positive memory for many, it would not be surprising for olfactory cues to have the best results in this study. Olfactory cued memories have also been shown to allow older memories to be recalled, which would be beneficial for this study since the children will be making these memories from ages 3 to 4, meaning olfactory senses will likely allow for adults to recall older memories. This will be an advantage when participants are asked to recall a childhood memory.
Seeing a familiar logo might trigger a visual memory, but according to the research, it is more likely to be recalled after a short period of time. Since our participants were asked to recall a memory from their childhood 20 years later with no other prompt, this will most likely not show the same effect. In our study, many participants exposed to the auditory cues may not recall the memory of playing on the playground. This is because it would likely not be a very emotional event, making it less likely for participants to recall the memory. So, although participants would recall the event shortly after it happened, auditory cues may not be useful long term. Therefore, it would not be surprising if the participants in the auditory group did not recall the memory as well as the olfactory and visual groups.
Research of childhood memory recall is an important topic that can further knowledge of whether auditory, visual, and olfactory cues contribute to recalling childhood memories. Based on previous research and our proposed hypotheses, we expected that positive memories of the scheduled play would link to better memory recall. We also expected auditory stimuli to be least effective in recalling these memories. If our hypotheses prove to be correct, we could then conclude that positive memories support childhood memory recall. We also expected auditory stimuli to be the least effective in recalling these memories. If our hypotheses were correct, we could conclude that positive memories support childhood memory recall and auditory stimuli have the least impact on memories. If our hypotheses were rejected, we could then conclude that either the stimuli have no effect or that the auditory is not the least effective stimuli in prompting childhood memory recall.